I hope.
Well, it says an unknown error occurred. Let me paste. Come back. No, I won't touch anything until.
It says live, but it's a black screen.
Okay, I'll wait.
Oh, there it is.
I won't touch anything.
It's showing live now.
Yay! We made our way to the destination of the internet. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I just posted in the chat. I think we are live. All right. Cool. Technically, we're supposed to be live at 3:30, so it works out. Sweet. Yeah, viewer just responded and said we are live.
Woohoo! Cool. Hi, interwebs. Happy to be here with you.
Hello, FPBTB. I also see a J-Scar in here as well. How's it going, buddy? All right. Cool. All right. Well, I figure we'll just hit the intro music in a few minutes here. Welcome to the pre-show that is 2 minutes before the actual show.
We're happy to be here. We're happy that you're here.
Well. Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna go get us some intro music.
Yep, sounds good. All right.
Welcome into the Fedora Podcast. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with my co-host, Mr. Noel Miller. Welcome in, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Noah?
I'm doing well. So it's been a hot minute since we've been together. How have you been?
Well, it's been interesting lately. So about 2 weeks ago, I've been trying to become more healthy and more adventurous lately. I'm now firmly in my 30s, and so I'm starting to notice the slow decline of my health, and if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't keep up with the kids very well. So it makes it difficult. So about 2 weeks ago, short little story, I decided, you know what? I haven't skateboarded in probably 20 plus years. I'm going to go give that a shot and see how it goes.
So hold on, Noel. And I just want to be clear. This is the part of the story where you're going to tell me that, so having not done it in 20 years, you sat down, you stretched properly, you did some warm-up exercises, you probably spent some time in your living room in a safe environment to work on your balance to make sure that when you went out on the skateboard that things were going to go well, right?
Oh yeah, no, all of that is stuff I totally did and made sure to make sure that that happened.
Good.
Yeah, so we get to the skate park and I get all the pads on, and I didn't even realize how many pads you could get, because when I was young, it was like, pads weren't as cool, and now that I'm adult, I'm like, I like my brain. I like my
Yes.
body not hurting. So I put all the pads on, everything like that, starting to learn how to do it. And I think it was an adult skateboarding lesson. And a lot of folks were a lot further ahead than I was starting out, because I hadn't gotten on a skateboard in about 20 plus years.
Sure.
The major thing when you're learning to skateboard is you should probably learn how to bail properly.
Okay.
And so I was doing just fine, getting kind of tired because I'm not used to balancing like that and stuff, and learning how to do things and just kind of rolling back and forth. And I got a little bit more confident and I tried to go up a tiny little ramp, and the skateboard went flying out from under me,
Oh.
and I fell straight down on my arm.
Oh.
Like my arm was extended like this and straight out and landed straight on it. I'm a little heavier than I used to be, and so
Yeah.
having about 200 plus pounds of force coming down straight onto your arm is probably not great. So that ended up being an ER visit, which I am very, very fortunate that it was just a really bad sprain. I've been
Okay.
dealing with it for about 2 weeks. It's very annoying. But the fact of the matter is that I didn't dislocate my shoulder.
Yes.
I didn't tear anything in my arm as far as muscles are concerned, because I got an MRI, because I couldn't move my arm, couldn't lift my right arm above my head, still can't, for the last 2 weeks. So it's been interesting trying to get any chores done around the house and that sort of thing, and figuring out a fancy way in which that I can position my arm, because I work at my computer all day, to make sure that I'm not aggravating the injury any more than I already did. So
do all your phalanges still work? Are they able to do the thing?
all my fingers still work.
Good.
Got lots more movement in my arm, but like I have to lift my arm in order to be able to get it to go up like that.
That's not important. The keyboard's right there in front of your belly button. You're all right. You're good. It's not. That's not a necessary thing for this. You need to go about this high, T-Rex high. We're good. And as long as the phalanges still have the ability to dance around the keyboard and do your magic, you're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, just either the trick with skateboarding is either don't fall, which that's never going to happen, or learn how to bail properly. And that should probably be the first thing that they teach you. But regardless, I'll be fine. I think my skateboarding career is cut a little bit short for now. If I ever decide to go back to it, I'm mostly upset because I want to get out and be biking for the rest of the year, because it's, I live in the cold state of Minnesota, and so how it is, Noah, living in a cold state. It's you can't really bike around most of the year. So
right.
Anyway, short story, not Fedora related, just me being a silly person, nearly dislocating my shoulder.
Well,
so
here's the Fedora relevancy. Okay, watch how we tie all this together. So we're going to talk coming up in the show a little bit about the Fedora Social Hour. Now, there's only one rule at the Fedora Social Hour. Do you know what the rule is? You can't talk about work.
Fedora.
Yeah, well, no, Fedora's okay, but you're on the right track, Noel. You're on the right track. The rule specifically is don't talk about work. Fedora is okay as long as it's pertinent to everybody that's participating in the conversation. The second that it becomes a thing between two developers or two people and they're just talking shop, that's no bueno. So here is how it relates to your skateboarding incident. The entire purpose, so far as I understand it, of Fedora Social Hour is to build genuine relationships outside of the technical. And I think to a degree, there is value in us unplugging from the technical and going and doing something else. To your point, taking the 150 some days a year that we get in this part of the country of good, solid weather to unplug, relax, and go do some move your body, where instead of folding it into an L for, you know what I mean, for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is a good thing. Now, preferably you won't throw it up in the air and crash it back down on to one arm. That's preferable. But it is important to have ways to unplug. So I guess I would ask you, if it isn't going to be skateboarding, if it isn't going to be biking, or if it is going to be biking, maybe that's the answer here. What do you do to keep yourself so that you're moving, you're getting the endorphins up, you're getting outdoors, you're getting the vitamin D? It's nice when we can be inside and in front of the computer where the HVAC system is awesome. The HVAC system outside, much more unpredictable. And so there's a degree of comfort that goes away there, but I think there's a benefit in moving around and being outside and doing a thing. So what is that thing if not skateboarding?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've recently gotten into cycling, which is not something that I expected myself to ever super get into. We've been having these bikes that have been taking up space in the shed for forever, and they're nice bikes. Like, it didn't take much, you know. It took basically an afternoon with me and my father-in-law, and we basically just took some time and, you know, got the bikes all sorted out and everything. You know, didn't even have to replace any parts on them, mostly just had to do some lubrication. And, you know, the front wheel on the bike wasn't working properly, like the brakes were too close, so we had to do a little bit of adjustments. But otherwise, yeah, like, I've been finding, for me, the biggest challenge, especially with being a geek or a nerd, is that I never really had any specific like activities that I was super excited to do in high school, besides like mostly like solo types of activities. And so I think for me, like, coming into my adult years, like, trying to figure out like what are enjoyable things that I can do that are outside, that, you know, things that I already have, you know, that I could try and do. And so I decided to go, you know, biking regularly for about, and I'm setting a very minimal goal at first, and now I've gotten in better shape, so I feel like I can go a little bit longer. But like, my goal was like, get out on the bike for 15 minutes.
Yes.
Which is, for a lot of people, not that much time. Like, I would argue, like, granted, like, I almost feel like I did almost more prep work to get on the bike than actual biking, you know. But the important thing that I'm saying with it is basically like just building that habit, that regular thing that you're doing every single day, and trying to find a spot in your schedule, I think is so important. And so, like, for me, I have noticed an absolute, like, the last 2 weeks for me have been awful because I haven't been able to get out on my bike and haven't been able to do a lot of physical stuff. I've noticed that, like, you're talking about the endorphins rush, the just being out, you know, in the sun is an incredible boost in my mood. Like, I'm much more productive during the day, like, even if it's just a 15-minute, you know, biking outside. You know, I've recently upped it to 30 minutes, which I think is definitely going to be better amount of time, and ultimately I want to move it more into the realm of an hour. But right now, you know, it's kind of one of those things where I was feeling pretty good yesterday, then today I got out on my bike and I'm like, I don't feel so great, my arm hurts really bad. So like, but I think it's trying to find an activity, like exercise, especially like going to the gym. And sorry that we're kind of going on a tangent here a little bit, but like, going to the gym and just lifting weights, like, unless I'm doing that socially with other people, I don't enjoy it.
Right.
It just feels like work. It's not fun to me. Like, if I have a goal in mind, then maybe I could probably move towards that. And like, but I also have to have it like dovetail into something I'm enjoying. And so like, I think the biggest thing is finding exercise and things that you can do that you actually like doing. Because, and set the goal really small at first. Just teeny tiny. If 15 minutes is too much, 5 minutes, like, literally just making sure that you're doing something, you know, to try to get in that habit of regularly doing stuff. Because like, my mood has been so much better at work, my mood has been so much better just generally in life. Like, I feel like I'm so much more productive. And so, to dovetail that into the social hour, you asked me, what am I going to do this winter? And I haven't quite figured it out. There's not a lot of winter sports I really like.
Uh-huh.
I've tried skiing, I've tried snowboarding, I've tried, I haven't tried cross country skiing. I might try that this year. But
Okay.
funny enough, Jeff, who's the Fedora project leader, if you haven't met him for more than 5 minutes, I have a couple of times, he is obsessed with curling. And he's like, it is an awesome sport. Like, he's like, I really, really like it. And the funny thing for me, Noah, is that Minnesota has a lot of folks that curl here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's really popular. And I have a curling rink about 15 minutes from my house. And so, like, I'm like, that feels like a pretty decent, like, I'll give it a shot. I don't know if I'll become as obsessed as Jeff is with it,
Mm-hmm.
but him and I talked about curling in the last social hour for probably almost an hour, just to kind of get an idea of, like, why are you so excited about this thing? What is
Mm-hmm.
so cool about it? And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that the social hour a lot of times is just dictated by, what do people feel like talking about,
Yes.
and I think that that's the value of it, is that, another thing that's been on my mind a lot lately, that dovetails in the Fedora land, is contributor health and contributor,
Yes.
just like mental,
Mm-hmm.
keeping it together, because, like, helping out with a project is a lot. You put a lot of your heart and soul and just everything you have into the work that you do, and especially, like, if it aligns with you, like, on a fundamental level, in the idea of, like, what the values the project has, it's like, it doesn't feel like work, but it still is, because it's mentally taxing.
And
And so
if
I
you do your
think,
job
yeah.
perfectly, nobody will notice that you did anything. It's only when something goes
Mhm.
catastrophically wrong that you're going to hear from the internet, and they'll be quick on your doorstep to tell you you should have done that better.
Yep, exactly. And so I think, like, for me, it's one of those things that I have really been trying to think a lot about, like, because I can't control other people.
Mm-hmm.
I can only control myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, me being in a better mental place and having more mental energy to be able to provide to other people,
Mm-hmm.
in those moments of, struggle or disagreement, or wanting to move things forward. Like, for me, I think that is the value that I can bring for myself, because if I'm not feeling good and you're not feeling good, and then we disagree on something, that makes it even worse. If I can pull myself away from it and try to understand the perspective of the other person, that does take mental effort and energy. But I think it's really important to try to do the best you can with that. And so, I think the social hour allows you to understand that the folks in Fedora were just people. We're not anything special. We're not this mythical, like, thing you have in your head of, like,
No, in fact, that's the best part about Fedora is it's a bunch of people just like you. They're nerds on the
yep.
internet that want to use a shared software project.
Exactly. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is just, trying to keep that in mind, and finding avenues and venues to be able to, to talk about those things, because, we all have our own backgrounds and experiences and things that we deal with, and I think it's really important to try to be cognizant, and even if you think that, GNOME is better than KDE, or Vim is better than Emacs, or whatever the case may be, like, just try to understand why the other person may disagree with you. And also, like, a lot of it is to each your own.
Oh,
So,
100%. Absolutely
you know,
100%. So let's talk a little bit about Fedora Social Hour. We kind of alluded to this. If you're not familiar with Fedora Social Hour, it for the foreseeable future is going to happen every week. It happens on Thursdays. Now, here's one of the really cool things about it. It starts on a matrix channel. And I would tell you there is a larger thing happening on the internet. And that larger thing that's happening on the internet is that social media, and specifically our ability to communicate with each other, is under massive attack. And it's under attack by organizations, by governments, by places that constantly want to change the way and the brand and the method by which you reach one another, because it suits their interests. And that can be for a variety of branding or corporate or monetary or legal reasons. But in the end, the problem to us as technology users is the same. I was trying to make a list of the amount of people that I have lost contact with and or the platforms that we've jumped for between, pick an arbitrary date, 2005 and 2025, right? And it is a long list. And one of the things that you'll notice, and this would be true whether or not you're in the Ubuntu space, whether or not you're in the Fedora space, whether you're in a completely different, all of these organizations and all of these groups are organically migrating over to Matrix. And that, in this case, for the Fedora Social Hour, is being used as kind of the jump point. It doesn't mean that everybody stays there. You want to play a game on Steam? People will play games on Steam, but it means you start there. It doesn't necessarily mean that that the only thing that happens is inside of that Matrix room. Maybe jump on a video call. You can absolutely do that. But it becomes a meeting point. It becomes a point of consistency that you can say, regardless of your socioeconomic background, regardless of your technical skill level, regardless of your involvement or lack thereof in Fedora, if you want to show up at Fedora Social Hour, you can go to fedoraproject.org. You can find all of the details there. You can join the Matrix room and you can get plugged into that community. And I think that is, I think it's important. I think it's a trend that you're going to see expanding on the internet. And I think the other places that you see people meeting are going to run into roadblocks one after the other as time goes on. I was a massive Telegram user, have been for 10 years. And I recently had an issue in which I could not keep my Telegram account logged in for more than, at one point, I got into my account and we went to dinner. And before we were done with dinner and got back to, I was actually at a conference. I was at Southeast Linux Fest. Before I actually got back to the hotel, I had already gotten flagged or something had canceled my account and I couldn't get back in again. And what do you do? With other platforms, back when it was IRC, when Freenode went through the mess that Freenode went through, we all went to LiberaChat. What do you do when the owner of a proprietary platform says you can't use my platform anymore? What do you do? What's the answer to that? And I don't know what the answer to that is. What I do know is it is causing a bunch of people in a bunch of different groups that would otherwise be unrelated or unorganized are all, unorganized isn't the right word, but all of these other people in all these other little factions are all coming into one place and landing in one place to be able to connect with each other. So I think that's worth calling out. But it serves as a jump point to then go into VR, to games, to discussions, to whatever you want to have. Now, they alternate between what they call an early 1400 UTC time and a late 2300 UTC time. So if you're doing the math on that, that's 10 a.m. or 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern. And they try to keep it that way when daylight savings time kicks in. Who's welcome? Everybody is welcome. Whether you are a Fedora enthusiast, whether you are a lifelong Fedora user, if you put Fedora inside of your machine and ripped all the USB ports out because you're that committed and you're just on the train and you're not moving, you're welcome. If you're a developer and you want to get involved with the project or start contributing, you're welcome. Everybody's welcome to do that. Again, we kind of alluded to this. They try to avoid making it into a work thing. So it's not, you don't have to know the lingo. You don't have to know what's going on in the project. You don't have to know any of that to just start and participate. But the thing that I really like about this, and the thing that I like about really all community hours / informal abilities to get together that happen on a consistent basis, it is a soft landing spot to people on the internet that don't know anything else about the project. They downloaded the Fedora ISO, they put it on their laptop, they went, hey, that's pretty cool. Oh, look at that, there's a Fedora server as well. So they install that on their server and they get Mindtest or something like that running. And now all of a sudden they have this really cool infrastructure, but they have questions and they're not really sure how this works. And they're not really sure how to get connected. They're not really sure who else uses this esoteric thing. And maybe they've asked some of their friends, but their friends, they're Windows users or they're Mac OS users or the whatever. And so this is an easy on-ramp for people to get started. And so the next one, so far as I understand it, is coming up Thursday, September 4th.
Yep, and it's going to be a late time. So for this one, it's the late time generally is better for folks in North America, just because like it's going to be probably roughly 1 or 2 in the morning for our friends in Europe. So that's why they rotate between the two different times. The early time, which is normally going to be during some folks' work days. So for me, last week, the time was around 9 a.m., but I'm in Central Time. So, but yeah, like I think like I would love to see more people show up to the social hour because I would say I've been trying to regularly go when I can. The late times haven't been working as well for me lately just because I'm trying to do other social things to try to recharge my social batteries, but like yeah, it's been only like probably a handful, maybe 2 or 3 people most of the time that are showing up. So if you're a person that kind of gets nervous in large crowds or whatever the case may be, I promise you there's not many people that are showing up currently, which is a big reason why we want to encourage more people to show up. It's one of those things that for me has been so beneficial when like starting with Fedora, my outsider perspective was basically like, I don't even know how to start with this project or how to get more involved. And for me, I think a big thing is the way that I got involved with Bazite was basically joining a Discord channel and chatting with people.
Mm-hmm.
And, that doesn't work for everybody, in regards to the voice channel stuff, but for the people that it does help, having those social communications through voice for me, I think just brings a lot more personality to the conversation. You get to know people, I think, more quickly, at least from my perspective. And so the social hour for me was incredibly beneficial when I was first starting to try to break into learning Fedora. And now I'm sharing a podcast with Noah, who I've been listening to for longer than I think most people have. Like I remember the days when he was on other podcasts before this one, and so it's kind of funny how the world works and how small it truly is. But I think that's really a big part of it is just like Fedora. It is a project. It does have a deliverable, at many deliverables, in fact, not just Fedora desktop, but all of the other spins and everything else. But I think above all, what Fedora has, which I think is most important, is the community of people that are, and what I mean by community is not just the developers. What I mean is the community as in folks who use it that don't even like know that they're part of the community, but they are because they're users. Like, and there isn't like this whole like hate the word, but like hierarchy, like just because you've been using Fedora for the last day does not make you any less of a Fedora user than someone who's been using it for probably since before I started using Linux. Like the whole point of it is basically just being involved with this awesome open source thing and really giving it your all. So I think in a lot of ways for me, it's just the social hour is really important, and I want to get more people involved with it because I've gotten so much from it myself.
Very good. I guess it's probably an okay thing to pause to say that if you have ideas on guests that we should bring onto the Fedora podcast, if there's specific domain knowledge that you're interested in, would you please reach out to us? Go to fedoraproject.org, use the contact mechanisms there to get in touch with Noel or myself and say, hey, we'd really like to have this person on. Noel and I are working with some people to try to get some guests on and bring information. It will help guide those discussions if we know what you're interested in. No, I wanted to ask do you do much with graphic design or sketching or 3D or CAD modeling or 3D printing, anything like that?
I don't.
So,
I know a lot of people who do, but I don't.
So I fell in backwards by way of a necessity for doing some basic graphic design, right? And I have always found Linux and Fedora specifically to be really great at that. But there's a fantastic write-up in Fedora Magazine. You can read it at fedoramagazine.org. And the title of the article is Fedora for Architects, Open Source Tools for Architectural Design. And in there, it goes into, it's a really great write-up on some of the proprietary tools that professionals use to design things. Everything from putting out basic designs to then putting sketches to then putting modeling to then doing actual CAD drawings and then filling those CAD drawings in with 3D renders with things like Blender. And they talk about Fedora as a design platform and how Fedora Workstation specifically is particularly suited for creative professionals that need the ability to leverage tools but don't have either a bajillion dollars to spend, or even if it's not a money thing, they want to do things in a free and open source method. And so they talk, in the article, it says, Fedora gives you access to a wide selection of open source applications through DNF, Flatpak, and Copper. Whether you're installing stable packages or testing the latest versions, Fedora software ecosystem is flexible and developer friendly. And then they basically walk you through. So you have an early concept, you have an idea, and it can be everything from, I had a friend who needed to design a gas cap. He lost the gas cap for his lawnmower and needed to design a 3D gas cap so that he could then print a 3D gas cap and prevent all the gas from coming out. Now, fun story. Did you grow up in a rural area, Noel?
I wouldn't say it's rural. It was probably more like a suburb, but there was a lot of rural areas around where I lived.
So in my neck of the woods, you know what we did when we lost the gas cap? You went and got a rag out of the garage and stuck it in the gas thing. That'll keep all the fuel.
I've seen that.
That'll keep all your gas from coming out because the rag's right there, you see. So, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be the appropriate safety way to do it. So he wanted to print a gas cap. Well, guess what? You have to know everything from how do I use a micrometer to measure the outside dimensions of what this gas cap needs to attach to you need to understand thread pitch, you have to be able to translate all of those things into a model that you can eventually produce G-code from that you can then 3D print, right? And the article at Fedora Magazine walks through the process that I understand my friend to have walked through: sketching and early design, drawing and modeling and visualization, then the algorithmic design, and finally the building information modeling and putting it into an actual CAD drawing that you can then export and then slice and then print. And so sometimes, for me anyway, the hands-on approach is a more effective invitation. If you just tell me, hey, you should go try out Fedora, I say, for what? I'm really happy with insert distro here, Arch, Ubuntu, whatever. If instead I tell you, hey, Noel, Fedora Workstation has a number of different things. It has support for pen and tablet. It has support for these particular softwares that exist inside of these particular repositories, and you're able to get to them on Fedora Workstation the following. And so if you were to go to Fedora Magazine, you were to click on that article, you would walk you through all of the different stages. And so you pick a project for yourself. I want to design, I want to use, I want to model X, Y, or Z. And then you try those different pieces of software out. It doesn't have to be anything particularly spectacular. It doesn't have to be anything, but any little itch that you can solve in your life where you can leverage those tools and play with it. To me, that's the most effective way to teach me a new skill. You put something a feather in my cap that I can say, I did this thing, and I come out on the other side. And the real win for me is when I can walk away from a project like that, Noel, and then I have something and I'm like, hey, now I have a skill. Now I have a newfound knowledge. Now I have a new tool. I remember the first time I learned how to design some things in Inkscape and use some of the tooling that was around Inkscape. It was by necessity. It wasn't that I sat out and was like, I'm going to be the world's best graphic designer. It wasn't that at all. I just needed to be able to replicate a logo, and I didn't have access to the expensive, proprietary paint shop, this, that, or the other at the time. And so the ability to sit down and say, okay, here's the tool that I have available to me and learn how to use it. Now I know that software like the back of my hand. And there's many, many times that I'm like, I'm going to go do that. Here's the deal. I'm just going to start with an 8.5, 11 canvas. I'm going to draw out and or compose with scalable vector graphics what I want this thing to look like. And then what would you like it in, boss? You want it in PNG? You want it in a PDF? Do you want the source vector graph file so you can blow it up to the size of the Empire State Building? Because that's a possibility. You learn those things and you learn where what that software is capable of. You learn where the bones are buried. You learn how to work around where the bones are buried. And it becomes a tool that you can continually go back. And so what started as I need to modify this logo turned into many times in many different facets of my life that you'd never would have thought a graphic design tool would be appropriate. I think the most crazy example, I think you and I share a hobby for music. And so putting together music charts is something I would have never thought, the best tool for that is graphic design. But actually turns out it is. And so it works really, really well for things like that. And so that skill set has directly translated across a wide breadth of different things that I've been able to do. So I would encourage you to, if you listen to this podcast and you are Fedora curious, we'll call it, and you say, I kind of want to get my feet wet, but I'm not really sure where to start about this kind of thing, where start with sketching something out, start with drawing something. And it can be anything from I want art to I want a part to I want to teach my kids how to 3D print and I'm looking for a project to do with them on the weekend. It could be any of those things and can be a really great way. And if this is you, we definitely want to hear from you because we definitely want you on the program. If you're a professional architect and you look at these tools and say, I could do my job with this, great. Then you're at the top of the list of people we want to talk to. We'd love to hear from that. But those tools are available. They work for the people that want to leverage them and the people that want to teach themselves a skill set, they use them.
I mean, at the end of the day, computers themselves are a tool in order to be able to achieve outcomes and things that you want to do. The most joy that I derive from computers is, as far as just like enjoyment, like playing video games. I work on a project, that is, for all intents and purposes, it is based on Fedora. And the fact of the matter is for me, what got me even more excited about the guts and learning even deeper about how these systems work is by, enjoying and playing video games and wanting to have a system that is stable, secure, and just works. I recently adventured back onto Windows just to see how things have been going because I haven't been using it for a while, and I installed Windows 11 and I noticed the I complain about the installation process of Linux, but Windows is not that much better, I would argue. And it's one of those things where it's funny, besides certain levels of compatibility, but I was even having issues with my audio interface, and I had the driver from the company installed, the proper version and everything, and I was getting random audio problems, while I was on Windows, and Linux, I have none of those problems, so that's one big thing. But I think it's just a matter of find things that interest you, and computers in a lot of ways, unless you get really into them, some people, they're not just a means to an end, but it's kind of one of those things where, again, most people in the way that they use computers is it's a means to an end. They want to do something. They don't want to dig too much terribly deeper into how it actually works. The way that I think about it sometimes is I have a refrigerator. And I'm much more of a curious person, but I am not super curious about how my refrigerator works. It's an appliance to me. I just want it to work. I just want it to keep my food cold. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. It's literally I want the door to work. And
occasionally the little light coming on is helpful to find out what's in the fridge.
Yeah, exactly. And when you start connecting my devices to the internet, I'm a simple man, but I don't need a internet connected fridge, for example,
with 19 cameras that look at you every time you open the door and scan your food and report to an app. Yeah.
It just feels a little overkill for me.
As a guy who bought the very first smart fridge Samsung ever made, we don't have enough time for me to put into words strongly enough to detail how much I regret that decision, right? It was amazing. In fact, I distinctly remember being so excited that I looked under the hood and found that this thing ran Linux. And I thought that was the absolute bee's knees. It was so cool that the fridge ran Linux. And it was cool until one function after the other stopped working. And it didn't stop working because something in the fridge failed. It stopped working, Noel, because the thing on the outside that it needed to reach out to changed, broke, whatever. And at some point, Samsung stopped offering updates for that smart fridge. And once that happened, it's a death nail. And so it is no word of a lie that I am now in a position to where I have to pick very carefully when the fridge boots up. That's the word I never thought I would say. I have to pick very carefully when the fridge boots up if I want crushed ice or if I want cubed ice, because once the fridge is fully booted, Noel, there is no way without going into the UI, which now doesn't function properly, to change from crushed ice to cubed ice. And so one of the most basic functionalities of the fridge, which is just this little grinder thing, it dropped down into the positioners that stay out of the way. That function, which could have been solved any manner of different ways to include just a lever outside the front and I can pull down any different, is now completely unavailable to me thanks to the lack of a software update, thanks to the lack of foresight from yours truly for purchasing a refrigerator that was smart. It was smart for the first 6 years, and now it's dumb. And at some point, and I'm just putting off the inevitable at this point, at some point I'm going to have to go replace it with a normal refrigerator. And whereas my parents and my grandparents would get 15 to 20 years out of a fridge, this thing made it 7 years before I start having software problems with the fridge. And now I'm thinking, not even 10 years in, well, I guess I'm going to have to replace this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, how stupid is this that I'm buying a new refrigerator? Cools, to your point, the lights in it work fine, Noel. The food stays cool. No, that isn't the issue. If I put things in the freezer, they freeze. In fact, sometimes too much so. So that part, solid. It's everything else that they baked into it sucks. And it was great for 5 years. And now it's abysmal and terrible. And don't make that mistake. Don't fall for the pretty shiny thing. If you're going to do some sort of smart thing, build it outside of the main appliances. And that lesson, by the way, goes for smart TVs too. You want to buy a smart TV? Buy a dumb TV and attach a smart thing to the dumb TV. And there's your smart TV.
That's literally exactly what I've done. Yeah, my parents recently bought a smart TV, and they're like, "Hey, I want to use this, feature, but it doesn't work very well and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but the smart TVs are not so smart.
Yep.
You're better off getting a set-top box basically that runs like Android or, God forbid, Apple TV, I guess, and basically attach that and use that." And one thing that I've been interested in lately is actually thinking about how game consoles have a lot of stuff built into them now, being able to run Netflix and HBO and all of those things. And things that I've been thinking about is trying to figure out ways to improve the multimedia experience, because I recently replaced my set-top box for my TV with Bazite running on a basically a small PC.
Did you really?
And
how does that work?
It works great. All of the apps that I need, there are flat pack versions for them. So Plex, for example, has a flat pack for HTPC, which specifically runs on it's meant to be controlled with a controller or a remote, but I also have a keyboard attached to it, just in case, as a break glass sort of thing. And the other thing is there's another flat pack called Vacuum Tube, which is basically a YouTube TV style app. The only thing that it doesn't work for is TV rentals. And I don't know if there's a specific type of DRM or something that they're doing. That is a whole nother topic we could talk about multimedia appliances in the Linux world. And I'm sure even Neil would actually probably be interested in coming on the podcast again to talk about that with us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I have been dealing with some of that pain where it's I have to get creative. So I have to use Chrome or Chromium and quote unquote install a web app and then add it to Steam, GameScope mode basically in order for it to actually render the page. And then I have to do a little bit of trickery from the command line to basically say like, no, I need this scaling because we have a 4K TV and it doesn't automatically scale very well with the browser. So like there's some apps that I've installed that aren't necessarily like, going to operate as smoothly as like something like an Android set-top box, but
Mm-hmm.
the power that I can get and the reliability out of a PC that I found, like it's going to be a hard thing to replace, like beyond like if the games stop, working well. But like I have this little minis forum thing, and I would argue the Framework desktop, not sponsored by the way, Framework desktop would be actually a really great choice in a lot of ways as a set top box, because like everything is all integrated in it,
Sure.
and you're basically getting a living room gaming console while also like setting up, a media, set top box. And my needs are probably a lot less than most people's. Like a lot of people have like every subscription under the sun, especially like my parents, for example.
Yeah, they
have,
do
like,
that to save
HBO,
money, by the
Apple
way.
TV.
Cable was too expensive, so they signed up for streaming to save
Yeah,
money.
no, my mom finally, it sunk in for her how much she was paying for all the individual streaming services, and I'm like, yep, that's how they get you. They literally just did it, except they switched it to IP based versus just doing normal cable. Even arguably, like
Right hand to God,
normal
this is a true story.
Yeah.
So the cable company in my city, I kid you not, they have RG6 quad shielded coax cable running into every house in the city. They are changing from their coax that they have a hardwired connection to every house in the city over to some cheap Chinese Android box thing that then has an app that they then stream all of the channels to. And I'm sitting there's an elderly gentleman that he's not a client of Ultispeed Technologies, but he's just a friend of mine, and so occasionally we'll call for some tech help kind of a deal. And so he calls me. He's like, Noah, I'm getting one of those the cable guys are coming over to put one of the new internet things in. Can you know about the internet and such things? Can you come stand by and teach me about it? Sure, yeah, why not? So I go over there, and I kid you not, Noel, the sales guy from the cable company is like, yeah, here's the deal. You're going to see this little message. It's going to say buffering. Don't call the 1-800 number. That's not a problem. That's expected. That's going to happen. In fact, if you're watching sporting games,
that's expected.
Yeah, and he goes. If you're watching sporting events, so I'm not a sports ball guy, so it's not me.
Right.
But he's like, if you're going to watch a sporting event, it's going to happen, because what's going to happen is lots of people watch the same thing. Then you're going to see that buffering message more often, and it's okay. What's going to happen is the game will just pause for a little bit, and then I'll come right back. It'll be no problem. Just count to 10. It'll come. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, pause. 1, you're ripping the infrastructure out that you use to deliver a perfect quality thing in favor of something that you're setting their expectations to be worse. So that right off the bat feels kind of like we're taking a step back, but I'll look past that. Secondly, and to me, what was more insightful, you're selling them an Android. You're giving them an Android box that has all the things. So the guy's telling him, right? Oh, you can open the app here, and that's how you'll load the channels. And then if you want to do like the Hulu or the Netflix or the Spot, then you just open this app store here, and it's anything that's in Google Play, it's on the Android TV, and just get that, and you download the app, and you do it. I'm thinking to myself, so you ripped out your infrastructure that delivered a superior experience so that you could sell them a device that features your competition.
Yeah.
Like, hello, what are we doing? So now you charge them $140 a month for the cable that isn't really cable. It's just simultaneous streaming of 140 channels. You better hope that they want all 140 of those channels, and it's not just like 4 or 5, because if it's just 4 or 5, they're going to go to those individual networks and go, screw this. If I have HBO, if I have, whatever, CNN, whatever it is, you're going to go get the networks that you want. And consumers are going to start building direct relationships with the places they want to get content from. And they're going to cut out.
Oh, they've already been doing that. Like
but now the cable companies are selling it to them. It's just backwards to me.
The cable companies, yeah, they are realizing, they're like, I need a piece of this pie. And like the reality is yeah, like Comcast is especially bad about this. Like, at least from my perspective, where like I've run into some issues with them, you know, with my parents and stuff. And I mean, me saying that Comcast is bad on the Fedora podcast, like, let's be real here. We're on the internet. Like,
yeah. Everybody has their own horror experience. Believe me, we know.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that for me, like, what's been so interesting is you're basically moving. At least for my family, we've moved into the model of, you know, basically local media again, where and like that is increasing the rates of piracy again, like, because like Gabriel said, which is piracy is a service problem. It's not a problem, you know, like it's an economics problem too, of course, because there's definitely higher piracy rates around the world in certain economic places that, you know, obviously can't afford the high price of certain things and services. But like the reality of it is, again, yeah, it's, and the frustrating thing is less and less media is getting, you know, distributed on Blu-ray. And so like, or just like any physical media at all.
Something that I can own.
Yep. Yeah. And so I think ultimately, like at some point, you know, there is going to be, I mean, already people in my generation have just made the decision that it's like, we're not going to put up with this. Like, I'm not going to put up with the high cost of all of these services. Like, you know, my kids are going to be able to get Bill Nye and I will figure out a way to acquire those files. I'm not going to try to figure out what streaming service Bill Nye's stuff is on
today.
Like,
that's the thing, right? It will be different, Noel, today than it'll be 10 days from now, and that will be different than what it is 6 months from then, and that'll be different from what it is 10 years from now. It will constantly change, and so you'll go back to a thing where there was water coming from the flowing thing before, and all of a sudden it's dried up, it's gone, it's not there. It's just very frustrating.
Yep.
I'm going to make two suggestions.
Oh yeah.
Make two recommendations. We'll start with the most budget-friendly option. We'll work our way up. So for a long time, I was a huge fan of the NVIDIA Shield, specifically the Pro, because the Pro had an IR receiver. Now, somebody is listening to this and going, what does he want an IR receiver for? Well, the reason is if you want the best experience with the universal remote, but no, they make RF learning remote. I know. If you want the best experience with a universal remote, you use IR. And the reason for that is because it's been around for a gajillion years. There are a gajillion different devices that can mimic it, from the low-end type stuff of the Logitech Harmonies to mid-tech from Universal Remote Control or URC, all the way up to the high-end stuff like Global Cache, where you can go buy an IR blaster and it gives you an IP address and it gives you an API endpoint that you can tie to a bunch of other things. Anywhere in that spectrum, IR is going to work. Secondly, you're not dealing with a wide frequency range. When you say RF, that can be anything, and is frequently anything from like 50 megahertz to 2.4 gigahertz and everything in between. And so I had a friend, he bought it's essentially like a mechanical reclining bed. He's like, hey, can you help me tie this into Home Assistant? We're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Well, every other bed / air conditioner / thing that I had worked with and we had tied in ran on 420 megahertz, 430 megahertz, something like that. And so we go take all of the devices that we know how to interpret RF stuff, and we go to try to do this for my friend. And it turns out his bed uses 2.4 gigahertz. You know how hard it is to find a generic 2.4 gigahertz? So anyway, you run into stuff like that. You don't run into those things with IR because it's literally just flashing lights, and it's a function of how fast the light flashes and when it flashes and those sorts of things. So the benefit there is that with the NVIDIA Shield Pro, I'm talking like the 2020 edition, I think that was last year they made them, those work flawlessly and they're great, but they have one fatal flaw, and that is that they have a spinning hard drive in them. So eventually they die, and I am getting to the point where I know these things are going to die. They're going to die. They're going to stop getting updates. Something bad is about to happen. And I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to replace them with, which is part of what piqued my curiosity when you were talking about Bazite. Bazite running on a PC is very appealing to me because largely for me, all I needed to run is Kodi. And I'm sure that Kodi is going to run on Bazite just fine. And so that's appealing to me because now my standard just becomes some sort of an x86 PC. But prior to hearing about your endeavors with Bazite and using it as a home entertainment PC, there's a device called the Boxy Android TV. BOXY, all capital letters so you know they're serious. It's $54.90 available on the Jungle Store. And it has an IR receiver. So the compelling selling point of the NVIDIA Shield, specifically for the Pro, was that it had so much horsepower by way of being a gaming machine that I just wanted to play media on, that it worked really well for playing media.
Yep.
I waited for nothing. The thing that
I told my parents to buy an NVIDIA Shield Pro and just call it a day. I even gave them one of the ones that I had because I replaced it with the Bazite box, and so they had 2 TVs. So I was like, yeah, you just need to buy another one because they're like trying to use the smart TV and it's not working the way they expect. I'm just like, I'm telling you, I know it's an investment, but I promise you it's worth it. Like, just do that and you won't be shit up a creek without a paddle, so to speak.
And even if it works the first time, Noel, it's going to stop working down the road when the software vendor releases an update, does this, out of the other. The thing that I like about the Boxy Android TV is that it offers me similar, if not identical, performance to the NVIDIA Shield Pro, yet it's all solid state based. It has an IR receiver. It's physically smaller. It runs cooler. And did I mention it's $54.90? So it's incredibly inexpensive, and you can purchase one again from Amazon. And over time. So I have gotten to the point now when I go into businesses or I go into organizations and they're like, yeah, we want to be able to play some media on the thing, and maybe we're going to put it on USB drive. Maybe we're going to blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take one of these Boxy boxes. You're going to spend $50. We're going to slap this, and we literally we double side tape it to the back of the TV. I take an HDMI cord and we plug it into one of the slots on the HDMI. We electrical tape that puppy off so that it's not tempting to disconnect it or unplug it, those sorts of things. And we just tell them, hey, you want to plug other things in, you want to do the Roku stick, the Fire Stick, the whatever, use that on one of these other 3 HDMI ports. When they break, not if, when they break, when you get signed out, when the app doesn't work, when, switch back over to this HDMI port. You got media, stick it in the SD card slot. You got media, put it on a USB flash drive. You have a server? Oh, wonderful. We created you a share called media. Anything you drop on there is instantly available to all your TVs. We put Kodi on the Boxy box and it's solid. So I could not implore you or anybody else enough. If you're looking down the road of, I'm looking for something to stream, obviously first choice, if you have the technical know-how and willingness to do it, get yourself an x86, get the Fedora-based Bazite, and then you have a gaming machine and a streaming machine. If you're a little tight on the moolah, then take a look at the Boxy Box Android TV for $54.90 plus shipping and handling.
Yeah.
Applicable taxes may apply.
I mean, and just to leave some folks with some thoughts that I've been having about the multimedia stuff as well, is like, I feel like what would be really cool potentially, because like, GameScope is great, it's open source, but it's still, for all intents and purposes, useful because a large company or organization, provides it. And Valve, for all intents and purposes, like, haven't really had many problems with them as a company. Like, they've treated consumers well. But I also remember when Blizzard was a semi-decent company, and now they no longer are treating gamers very well. So like, it's kind of one of those things where I'm not saying that anything is going to change, but like, I do think what's interesting in the space right now from a multimedia perspective is I know Plasma Mobile is working on some things related to a TV version. And so the biggest challenge that Fedora has from the aspect of playing media is just like, codec licensing, DRM, those types of things, especially with like Netflix and stuff. Like Linux still on, even like an x86, like in the browser, like PC or whatever the case, like cannot play a full 4K stream from what I understand. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe that's changed, but I remember like specifically like trying to load up a version of Netflix, and folks are like, yeah, the best you get is like 720 1080p, which if you have a nice TV, that looks like crap, And so like the biggest thing for me is just like I would love to see, more work in the open source space, as far as like if we're already moving to local media anyway, then some of that stuff doesn't necessarily matter too terribly much. Like if you're using Jellyfin or using Plex, then in my opinion, like something like Bazite, where it works like a like a gaming console, but can also play movies and TVs and stuff from your local stuff. Like if you're more advanced, then that works great. But what I would love to see is the possibility of like a Fedora powered like version that essentially like ships directly, like with something like Plasma TV or Plasma Mobile or something that essentially is like meant to act like a TV interface, something that people are used to using, can hook up with remotes and stuff like that. But it's kind of one of those projects where it's like a lot of people have just kind of settled in and they're like, I have an Xbox, or I have a Android TV, or I have the smart TV thing on there, and they don't really want to go above and beyond. And I think like there's like a very open potential opportunity here for Fedora or other players in the space to basically be like, hey, like I would like to have a good experience watching TV. Kind of sucks right now. It's very, very hacky, but I could see it in a few years. Like if there was a focused effort towards fixing that maybe it could be better. I think there's just going to be limitations with the DRM thing. And I think mostly the problem with the DRM thing is it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem, where like companies don't want to support a platform that doesn't have very many users because they don't have the users, but like if you don't support the platform, then it won't grow. So like it's kind of one of those things for me where it's like I value the growth of whatever we can do to get folks interested in Linux. And so your approach, Noah, of talking about how we earlier talked about, which was like figuring out ways in which we can bring people in and make the computer useful to them. I think that is what is important, above all else. So that's my soapbox.
You alluded to this earlier. The real core crux of the problem isn't, at its deepest level, it's not so much hardware is only a part of the recipe, right? The real crux of the problem, and you said this, it's becoming the lack of ability to own the media, right? If you think about it, the example that you gave whereby which DRM prevents you from getting a full resolution stream, well, that's really only a symptom, right? The root cause of the problem is I don't have that media. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to them, and they're willing to stream it to me over a proprietary app so long as I'm willing to pay them the ransom every month. The second I stop paying the ransom, they want the ability to shut the tap off, and so because they want to shut the tap off, they want to make sure I'm not duplicating it. To make sure I'm not duplicating it, we have to introduce DRM. To introduce DRM means that we add too high of a friction, and like you said, when you have copyright infringement, it's always at the root of the problem, a service problem. And so they don't want to raise the threshold too high to drive everybody out. So what do? They draw the point of friction at 720 and they say, here, if you're doing funny business, have a low resolution stream. It will not be particularly useful to you for capturing, uploading, recording, all the rest of it. And if you do, it isn't going to be the same quality that we can provide by way of a 4K stream with all the DRM stuff. So they're comfortable with that line in the sand. What I think you and I are talking about is you and I are not comfortable with that line in the sand. We want to eventually own the media. And so to the extent that it continues to go the route of, well, we're just not going to publish that at full resolution on a Blu-ray disc, you and I, to some degree, are a fish out of the water. The other side of that is, so long as people are making media, there will be people pirating media. So long as there are people pirating media, there will always be a push to have somebody who wants to own it. So we just got to be a little bit more vocal. And we just need to be willing to adopt some of those technologies that let us do it. And so I think the Boxy is a way to go. I think building a streaming PC is a way to go. I do think there's maybe some wisdom in by way of, if you already have an Xbox, if you've already got a PlayStation, why would you buy another piece of hardware if it could just run a piece of software? So maybe there's something to that. And then if the sky was the limit and you had oodles of money to spend and you just want to support companies that are doing it the right way, I want to make a plug for OSMC. So OSMC.tv, they make the Vero. The Vero, it's about $150, and what it is a it's a media player specifically designed to run OSMC, which is their fork of Kodi. So they took Kodi, they put some flavoring on it, they made it really nice and pretty, they added some UI elements by way of Wi-Fi and network configuration and the things that you wouldn't ordinarily have because that would typically built into the underlying OS. And then they box it as a physical device that you can just purchase from osmc.tv and order straight to your house, or flat because they're based in Europe.
Yeah.
So all of the options are available, from the $50, $54 Boxy Box to the Vero 4K, which is about $150, $160, all the way up to go buy yourself an x86, flash it with Bazite, run the latest, do all the things, and get yourself the most amount of power for your buck.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think there's a huge range, and you know, I know we've been kind of all over the place with this episode. You know, like I said, you know, we're gonna try to see if we can get more interviews for folks and stuff like that, and talk about more specific Fedora things, but you know, at the end of the day, we really just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of the social hour. And, you know, the bigger thing for me, too, is the fact that it's like Fedora is awesome, but, you know, it's also awesome to be able to highlight and talk about things that are within the sphere of open source and Linux. And how it all ties into Fedora is, you know, you can use Fedora to do most of these things, you know, and I think that's what's so cool about it, you know. So if there are any folks, I'll just put out a plug here, if there are any folks that are interested in like multimedia and stuff like that, and you know, would like to try to build a better experience, I mean, that's something to me that, you know, I know we have like 1 million SIGs inside of Fedora, but I do feel like that is a dragon that maybe we could potentially slay in the open source community, because like I'm just very tired of a lot of the weird workarounds and stuff like that we have to deal with in the multimedia space. And maybe there are specific dragons that we can't slay, and we just have to, you know, realize that this is the way that the ecosystem is. And, you know, but I think if we can get more people just using open source, using Fedora, using these tools and things like that, in whatever way they're comfortable, and try to meet people where they're at, I think that in the end, you know, we're going to have a large enough consumer base that can actually start pushing back and say, hey, companies actually give a crap about us because we are here, we do exist.
100%. So we aim to record the show every 2 weeks. We hope to see you live at around 3:30 Central. That's when Noel and I get started. We're back in 2 weeks. Find more at fedoraproject.org. And that's an episode.
Yeah. Nice.
Well done, Noel.
Thanks. Yeah, we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit here.
That's okay.
But
that's okay.
That's good.
Organic discussion, my friend. Organic discussion.
Yeah, for me, I think that's kind of the biggest thing is, you know, really trying to find ways in which that we can, you know, have more organic discussions on the podcast and stuff, because, you know, I notice, you know, I noticed that it was kind of one of those things again where it's like, you know, I like just the two guys talking types of podcasts, you know, where like folks are just kind of, you know, being chill and stuff. I just want to, I'm going to make sure that the stream is actually ended here. Let's see. It doesn't show that it's okay. No, it does show that it's oh, it shows error. No, it's still live, I think.
Do you want me to go kill it from my end?
Yeah, if you're able to kill it on your end, I think